The ideas that contributed to the violent riot at the U.S. Capitol last year are alive and well. A study from the Chicago Project on Security and Threats shows 21 million Americans, some 8% of adults in the country, support the idea that the 2020 election was stolen and the Biden presidency is illegitimate. A year after the insurrection, research shows many of these ideas have become more mainstream, and the extreme right has gained supporters. Joining us now are Robert Pape, professor of political science at the University of Chicago and director of the Chicago Project on Security and Threats, Odette Youssef, national security correspondent on extremism for NPR, and Alvin Tillery, associate professor of political science and director of the Center for the Study of Diversity and Democracy at Northwestern University. Welcome back to Chicago Tonight, all three of you. Alvin Tillery, let's start with you, please. Looking back, how do you feel a year after the insurrection?
Well, I feel like we are in a much worse place, actually, because the movement is growing stronger. I don't see any of the top leaders being held accountable. And as Professor Pape's work has shown, the ideas are being more mainstream by a constant diet of disinformation that's being put out by those that are perpetuating this coup attempt.
Robert Pape, your group, as we mentioned, you've come out with this study this week called The American Face of the Insurrection. What did you find about the people who participated in that?
The key finding is that the insurrection that occurred on January 6th was perpetrated by mainstream America. Over half of the about 700 that have been charged with breaking into the Capitol, over half are business owners, CEOs, and from white-collar occupations, doctors, lawyers, accountants, and managers. Only 7% who are charged were unemployed at the time of January 6th. Only 13% were members of militia groups like the Oath Keepers or extremist groups like the Proud Boys. That's very different than we're used to seeing with right-wing violent offenders in the United States or really in Europe or around the world, where a quarter or more are unemployed, where half are typically connected with skinhead gangs or other militant groups. They're not people who broke in and stormed the Capitol are from mainstream America, and that is something that's disturbing, and it is different than we're used to thinking about with right-wing extremists.
And I think you also found that they come from, 45 states, so all across the country, mostly from counties that went for Joe Biden instead of Donald Trump. Odette, how has the far right been able to maintain itself and actually even gain supporters in this past year and sort of maintain this paranoia after the election?
Well, it's interesting, Brandis, because I think in the weeks immediately after the riot at the Capitol, there was a quieting of those voices. Key voices such as former President Trump were deplatformed from Twitter, for example. Some of the hubs online where they gathered, such as Parler, lost their hosting services. And there was that paranoia you mentioned about public gatherings, and so many of those were canceled. But what we saw, particularly starting in the late spring and summer, is a new sort of strategy that was decentralized, more focused on glomming onto sort of culture war issues at very local levels. So you started to see some far right groups show up at school board meetings, for example, to protest against mask mandates, or showing up in front of city halls to protest against vaccine mandates. And what happened there was you had this mixing of people from far right groups with just, the more mainstream Americans that Robert was just referring to. And with that mixing, we started to see the more extreme ideas gain traction. And so this has been a really interesting sort of grassroots decentralized approach at spreading some of the beliefs that drove the riot at the Capitol last year.
And Alvin Tillery, give us some context here. How historically significant is this moment, especially when you factor in the importance of voters' rights?
Yeah, well, Professor Pape's research, I think, is a great frame on this issue, but actually his findings don't really surprise me that much because white supremacy has been a mainstream problem in the history of the United States. And we think about extremist violence that led to the storming of the Capitol. Many of the motivations led to extremist violence in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, as African Americans were trying to make us fully a multiracial democracy for the first time by getting voting rights. And so there's really a bright line connection between the sort of concerns about the changing face and demographics of the country and the motivations of these people. Those are very old motivations woven into the fabric of our society. So Odette talks about mask mandates, but let's not also forget a lot of these school boards are disrupted about critical race theory, right? Because the boogeyman of telling people that we are a society predicated on $97 trillion worth of free labor from slaves between 1619 and 1865 is somewhat controversial. This really tells you what the motivations are. It is about their discomfort with where we are now as a majority-minority society.
Robert Pape, along with a disbelief in the election results, you also found that many insurrectionists and the sympathizers fall into two major belief categories: the Great Replacement theory and the QAnon theory. Talk about the concerns the concerns with millions of people believing in these two theories.
So race is definitely a driver that we're finding in our studies. So in the 21 million, you mentioned that in our studies, we found 21 million Americans holding these radical insurrectionist sentiments similar to those who stormed the Capitol on January 6th. Well, the number one belief in the 21 million, fully 75% of the 21 million, is the idea of the Great Replacement, the idea that the Democratic Party and liberals in general are deliberately flooding the country with people from the third world so that they can change the demographic structure so that whites will become a minority in the United States. That belief has been essentially right-wing conspiracy theory for a long time, but much more on the fringes of our society for a long time. What's really striking is to see this agreed to in opinion surveys, and actually multiple ones over time, by this mass number of folks. This is really quite striking to see. And what it means is that we have to be concerned going forward that there are people in the media, popular people in the media, who are embracing the right-wing theory of the Great Replacement. There are politicians, mainstream politicians, embracing this idea. And this is this cocktail we have, which is turning and spinning these ideas violent.
We are running out of time. I want to get Odette Youssef in here one last time. Why isn't it possible, Odette, possible to use law enforcement or deplatforming to get out of this? Why is that not the answer?
Well, it's for the very reason that we've been discussing about the mainstreaming of this phenomenon. The solutions that have worked in the past, surveillance of particularly targeted populations, relying on people to flag if they know, inform law enforcement if they know of any planning around any violent activity. It's much more difficult to use those tools when there is, as Robert was saying, this sort of mass community support for political violence. And that's, I think, one of the most troubling things that we have seen over this past year is that there is a growth in support among just regular Americans to use violence to achieve political ends.
And of course, in a country where we're free to think whatever we like, it is difficult to change hearts and minds. That's where we'll have to leave it. Alvin Tillery, Robert Pape, and Odette Youssef, thanks to all three of you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.